This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, hi everybody. This is Brian Keith Noonan, and this is call 4 of the Q4 implementation at the speed of focus challenge, or YATSOF challenge, one thing challenge. And I'm joined here today with by Jimmy and Tiffany. So good to see you guys. Thanks for showing up live. You know, I don't like talking to myself, and I like to keep things interactive. So I think a couple of interesting things have happened this week. And so if you would, and you feel like sharing any particular wins, challenges, or comments in general on how you're implementing the one thing concepts in your life over the past week that would be notable and useful to the rest of the group.
Well, I guess I could share a little bit. You know, I've been working, trying to really get my coaching business going, utilizing the principles that I've been reading. This is like my third time reading the book now. And
it starts to stick after a while, doesn't it?
Well, every time I read it, I realize something that I missed the last time I read it.
Yeah, me too.
Which is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I think I missed the last time I read it was the whole idea of thinking big and not, and just, come on, go away. And not just really.
Who should go away?
Well, I keep getting this notice that says that the one thing challenge is happening now, and I'm telling it to leave. And it just keeps coming back onto my screen.
Good stuff.
No matter what I tell it to do.
It's happening. Yeah, it's true.
Well, it's real, you know. Computers, I love them. But anyway, so in that whole idea of thinking big and you know, and thinking so big that I realized I can't do it by myself, I started to realize that in what I really want to coach people to do, and that's to change the way they think about their lives. Not so much help people change what they do, but change how they think. Because if they change how they think, they'll eventually change what they do.
Sure.
And so I use that a lot in my day job. You know, I counsel people in crisis who, you know, think that life is not worth living and they should just leave the planet. And I had a client recently that, I mean, I spent 4 straight days with this person, probably at least an hour and a half every day out of my 8-hour day at work, coaching this person to believe in themselves as a human being. And, you know, and in the end, I realized that I got to treat myself the same way. And next thing I know, I'm discharging this person from work, and she's starting to feel really good about her life, feel good about her chances. And she just up and says to me, do you do anything outside of working here? Because I'd really like you to coach me.
Well,
and it was like, okay, I never even ever gave it a thought that all these people I work with every day, that any of them could possibly ever become somebody that I would coach, just because they're pretty messed up when they come to me, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of had this idea that coaching people, I might be working with people that are a little messed up, but not totally in the tank.
But
you know?
It's amazing what a couple of distinctions can do in terms of someone's whole outlook on things, right? So
yeah.
Somebody who, and I think, you know,
I think we're all really messed up. So
present company included,
but not suicidal.
They're vulnerable.
Yeah, present company included. Yeah. We've all been to places like that where, you know, maybe not suicidal, but basically totally fucked up in one way or another. Like, we've had that journey, right?
No, it's suicidal. It's just guilt and shame turned inward instead of turned out into anger.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've all been there, been there, even if we're not literally there.
And so we won't necessarily psychoanalyze this, but the cool thing is that you identified basically by who you've been becoming and doing and your intentions. You defined a whole new kind of marketplace for yourself in a way. But not only that, and just like more importantly, a population of people that you can help that, you know, if they're getting these distinctions and go out of that, you know, that you've seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, survival things first, and then you get into further self-actualization. So if you can bump them up like a level on that, just from the way they're looking at things, then yeah, they're not so fucked up anymore. They're like hopeful and making progress and cool stuff like that. And that shit will, I mean, that excites me. That really lights me up when I can help somebody like that. You know?
Yeah, and you know, and I utilize almost every day with certain people the focusing question.
Yeah.
You know, okay, here you are. It's the 8th of November, 2018. What can you do here, locked up on a psych ward, that is going to make everything else either not necessary or a whole lot easier?
Yeah.
And I just throw it at a lot of people, and you know, 10 or 15% get it, and they go, wow, I guess I could come up with something.
Yeah.
And they usually do.
Nice. Well, congratulations on that. I don't know the details of the transaction and what have you, but that's a big thing, and you can take whatever conversations you had with her leading up to this, okay, and apply it to everyone else that you're in contact with. You know,
Correct.
and kind of reproduce the same thing. So it was obviously a powerful and compelling interaction where you were present, you were of service, you helped, and she felt the help, and she was like, I want more of this. It's like, I call it the foregone conclusion enrollment system, which is basically like they've experienced something that they want to continue. You know, it's not like you're selling them something. It's like you're giving them, and you're being present with them, you're being empathetic with them, and you're coaching them, and which you did by default because that's your job over there, and you're serious about doing your job at a very high level. But it's something that you want to continue. So when they ask us, how can we do more? That's where we want to be.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Tiff, anything from you?
Not so much this week. That would be useful to very many people.
Cool. Well, I got something that I was thinking about. From what you said last week. Now, if you guys will remember, Tiffany shared that one of her bigger long-term goals was eradicating corporal punishment with children in the United States in terms of making it illegal and whatever. Now, this is a real thing, okay? Not too much more than 5 years ago, when we were living in Georgia, we had to sign a waiver, okay, for our kids when they were in pre-K and kindergarten before they started getting homeschooled, that we did not want them to get paddled by the principal or headmaster. Fucking paddled. We wouldn't paddle.
Yeah, the default was that they had permission to corporally punish. Yeah.
Yeah. So the default is they're subject to that. And if we didn't want them to be subject to that, we had to sign a form. Like, all right, you're not going to fucking paddle our kids. This is real. I'm sure it's still going on now.
It's still legal in Georgia. It is still legal in Georgia.
Yeah. So that's within the school system, okay? I mean, and not even, it was a private school. So not even, whatever. It's real. It's happening. Hey, Tim, good to see you, man. Look at you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can now.
All right, good to see you, man. I haven't seen you in a long time live. Welcome. So we were just talking about Tiffany's goal that she brought up last week about making it illegal to corporally punish children. And we were talking about when we lived in Georgia five years ago or so, we actually had to sign a waiver so our kids would not be subject to being paddled in pre-K and kindergarten, paddled by the headmaster or the principal, whatever the fuck it was. They're doing that, They're still like, there's go to the office and fucking get paddled if you did something wrong. That's alive and well in Georgia. I don't know about where else, but so anyways, why I bring this up is it plays into the last lie that we're going to go over, which is the biggest bad lie. Okay, chapter 9. But in terms of, I guess the theme of this, if we're going to use that chapter as a theme of our conversation today, it has to do with kind of allowing yourself to dream a little bit, to dream kind of big a little bit, and just ask bigger questions so that you'd say, well, all right, if I was going to do that, if I was going to get legislation passed to make corporal punishment for kids illegal, for example, what would that look like? What type of, like, what's the who? Like, what type of people would I have to be interfacing with? And how would I be doing it? And when and what, things like that. And we're going to be going over stuff like that. But our minds, especially when things start to get big, tend to, the logical / objective part of our minds tend to talk ourselves out of it. So it's like, well, that would be nice, but I don't know the right people. I don't have the right resources. I don't have the time. I don't have this, that, and that. Right. So what I would invite you to start thinking about in terms of when you're doing those goal setting exercises and when you're thinking about how big things could be is just allow yourself to dream and drift into that a little bit and say, well, all right, well, what if, what would it look like if I helped 10 times as many people? Or what if the business was 10 times as big? Or if, it was just that much grander in scale. And as you're all this, this journey, right? Whatever this journey of life is, it's steps, right? Step. Or when we talk about change, there's degrees of change. And it's sort of like, I believe that we kind of have to go through every degree. Now, in terms of the speed with which we go through the degrees, that's optional. We can determine that. We can go through them fast. So like change can happen fast, things can get bigger fast, et cetera, et cetera. But nevertheless, you kind of have to like hit all the wickets on the way through. So what the bigger picture will enable us to do is, if you can imagine, like if this is the high mountain, and as you're going on a journey, you're kind of going up some preliminary hills on the way up. Each hill that you go up on the way to your big mountain over here is going to kind of give you a different view. There's going to be different people, potentially different people involved in terms of a team or associates. There's going to be different systems. There's going to be different doors open and opportunities and directions and things like that. So as you take a few steps, each few steps you take, you sort of have a different view. We've talked about this before, but goals will adjust, but just having a direction and a target, especially if it's one that's big enough that lights you up and challenges you. Okay, I'm just using Tiffany's as an example, but if it's big enough and it challenges you and it lights you up, you're going in that direction. And every once in a while, you're kind of looking around like, all right, well, is this still what lights me up? Is there a distinction that I've learned along the way? I've taken some actions. Are there more people that could help with this cause? Is there, do I see better ways to do it? Whatever the case is. So the moving forward and the action and the taking of the steps along the way will always give you a better view of what's to come. And try to not let your logical mind or your objective mind or your rational mind talk you out of shit. You can more ask better questions like, all right, well, this seems kind of big, but if I was going to do that, right, if I was going to affect this change in the world that I have in my mind, what would that look like? Who would I need to, who would I need to do it with? Who would I need to know? What would I need to know? What would I need to know about laws? What would I need to know about rules? What would I need to know about certifications or licenses, or whatever, You can start asking questions, and then it creates a mix of things that are create enthusiasm and motivation, and just taking the next couple steps forward, and then you can kind of see what the view looks like from there. So with that said, Tim, did you have anything to throw in terms of, since you joined us a couple minutes late, wins, challenges? I know you had some interesting progress with things going on this week. You want to share anything in terms of, as it relates to the one thing, wins, challenges, comments?
Well, the big thing for me was actually coming up with a better metaphor and then being able to write a story about it and do the semi-fictionalized version of how this stuff works. And as far as the biggest big is better is actually what it should be, because small goals are not nearly as exciting as a big goal.
Yeah.
You're
I
getting
mean, there is a school. There's a,
much fun compared to New World.
there's a very interesting book by Tracy Goss, which is called The Last Word on Power. And it kind of talks about like whatever got you to where you are now is not going to be at all what gets you to the next level. And it's kind of interesting because it talks about, I guess, what can be summarized as impossible goals, like setting that someday goal to be something that you don't know if you'll ever complete. You don't know if you'll ever get there in your lifetime. And it gives you the point is not getting there. The point is going toward it. Okay. As we go toward a target, then new things, new information, new information comes to light, dude. I mean, you guys are big Lebowski fans. I don't know. But I mean, new information has come to light, and all of a sudden, maybe the goal changes, maybe it gets enhanced in one way or the other. But it allows us to ask ourselves expanding questions, which then help us become the person who could do something like that or move toward it. So, anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and share screens, and we're gonna take a look at the book, which is The Last Lie of Chapter 9. Big is bad. And I think I pretty much covered what I wanted to say about this in our conversation thus far. Okay. But, we don't want the shrinking thinking. We want the bigger thinking. Okay. I love this point here. No one knows their ultimate ceiling for achievement. So worrying about it is a waste of time. And isn't it funny how people in general, and I know, even from personal experience, like, have you ever felt like you had to kind of play small or downplay your greatness or your message or your mission in life because you're around people that are thinking small? And like, so we're like, oh, well, I'm so concerned about how they feel. I don't want them to feel bad, so I'm going to just be small. Fuck that shit, man. But I think it's sort of, in a way, kind of rampant. Like we're so dialed into what other people are thinking and trying to be responsible for their feelings, which is a total shit show and not worth pursuing. But if you haven't gotten there yet, just think about it. Are you going to shrink yourself and your impact on the world and your fulfillment and joy and what lights you up just because there's people around you that don't get it? I would suggest no. If we were talking about something like that this week also. All right, he was talking about the guy who founded Hotmail, okay, basically came from nothing and had it in his mind he was going to have this massive freaking successful company, which he did. The only actions that become springboards to succeeding big are those informed by thinking big to begin with. And I like this. Okay, there's a couple diagrams I like and that are important. If you look at this, the axis of this, you've got thinking axis going this way and time and effort. Okay, but what this is showing, if you see how these two arrows are lined up, it's the same amount of time and effort, but the bigger thinking will get to a bigger outcome in the same time and effort as smaller thinking and smaller outcome. That's something to consider. You ask some little bit bigger questions, think maybe there could be a larger impact. Maybe there could be more service. Maybe there could be more results from what I'm doing in a bigger way. If I play big, then really you can get to the same place by asking those better questions and bigger questions and not letting your logical mind, your objective mind that we tend to rationalize everything and talk ourselves out of shit. Don't let that take over. So what you build today will either empower or restrict you tomorrow. Like this one too. We talked about the what, the how, and the who. Okay, same axis. Thinking going up and down, time and effort going horizontally. So if we think of the small what, how, and who, then the same amount of time and effort will get us to a small outcome. But if we go with a bigger who, what, how, and who. Allow us ourselves to be creative, resourceful. Now, this is not the type of exercise to do when you're stressed and feeling scarcity in your life or uncertainty or whatever, but it's more like the type of thing to do after you meditate for a few minutes and you think, well, if this could happen, what would it look like? How would it, how might it come about, and who would be involved in terms of a team? And I like what Jimmy said today also about, like, I can't do it alone. The things that we're going to do, if we're going to do them on a really big scale, they're not going to be just us alone. It's a team. It's a team that's required. And you can start thinking about how to delegate things that also that are, when we talk about our shield, our calendar that's our shield, and our sword that's our priorities, how to cut things out and hand them over to somebody else that don't serve us. Okay. And Tim and I were talking about him like trimming the hedges or some shit last week, and there's a document I meant to share with you guys that has to do with, sort of like cost per hour stuff and what you should delegate to somebody else and what you should do. And I guarantee you, if you're pressed for time, there's stuff within your schedule that could be more efficiently delegated to someone else, whether it's cleaning your house, mowing your lawn, doing your laundry, whatever. There's stuff in there. There's creative ways that, you're actually, the opportunity cost that you're spending by doing that versus working in your zone of genius somewhere or on your business in any way, it's more expensive for you to do laundry than it is for you to pay somebody. It's more expensive for you to mow the lawn than it is for you to pay somebody. It's more expensive for you to clean the house than it is for you to pay somebody. It may not seem that way at the surface, but I hope you guys are kind of getting what I'm saying. Have you had thoughts about this? About tasks that take up your bandwidth, use up some of your finite supply of willpower and or energy?
Well, definitely the willpower and the supply of energy. I'm the grandfather of this crew. And just by nature, my energy level is waning a little bit. So I'm finding ways to, mostly on my one thing, to recharge my battery. I'm giving that a little bit more time than some of the other one things even, because if I can recharge my battery, then when it comes down to the things that are going to propel my business or make what my goal in life really is, I'll have the energy to do it. So it's like reprioritizing my one things.
I love that.
Giving a little more time.
And our well-being, our feelings of well-being, emotionally and also physically, whether it's staying hydrated, make sure we eat something over the course of the day, taking care of ourselves in general. That really is, I'm finding more and more the one thing that enables everything else. Okay, it doesn't have to do with even age. Maybe it has to do with age a little bit or wisdom, to a certain degree, because I can't do like as I approach 50 here, I can't do what I did when I was 21 and like go out and party all night and show up in the morning, like without sleeping or whatever. And like, it's nothing, or whatever the hell type of things. But we get this perspective, but for anybody watching this and for you guys also included, like we can make those choices to take better care of ourselves ahead of time. And, it's not even really a factor of nature and our bodies and shit like that, as much as just making that a priority, and then you're just that much better for everything else. And we looked last week at those charts of sort of like the morning to morning break, recharge, the afternoon to the afternoon break. It's like the willpower, energy, and good decision making is a downward curve each time, and then you kind of regroup, whether it's having something to eat, making sure you're staying hydrated, take a little nap or a meditation or whatever the hell it is, gives you that recharge the battery, go back and focus and be more resourceful and be more creative and be more effective in terms of what you're trying to accomplish, and also how you're kind of if you guys, and this is something I get more into with my one-on-one clients, but in terms of like how you're vibrating and the frequency and what you're allowing into your life, and what you're in sync with, and stuff like that. Tiffany, you okay over there with your internet? You're on your phone now.
No, I'm apparently not vibrating very well. Things are not going my way at the current moment. I was contemplating meditating or getting back on the call, but I am here.
Good job. Good job. Thanks for coming back. Resetting the router settings or power cycling the right router probably will help you, because you have enough speed over there too. Not have a big problem. Okay. Back to the book. Any thoughts that anybody wants to add on that? Can you see how if you're asking a bigger question, you can get a better answer? Like, better questions that we ask ourselves lead to better answers. And in this case, we're talking about bigger. How big is your box? Is it a big box or a small box? No reason for any of us to play small. We all have the aptitude and the heart and the ideas to do some big stuff. And I'm not saying that sometimes I don't look at what certain people are doing, like, all right, well, Peter Diamandis and the X Prize and all this shit, like some things going on around that I see people do. I think, maybe I could never do that or stuff like that. That's my rationale, rational mind, my logical mind, my objective mind. But if I allow myself to dream a little bit and say, well, like, what level could I take what I do to? How could I make an impact on the world? How big could it be? You allow yourself to dream a little bit and make those someday goals big, almost like unattainable big. Then it's almost like you're shooting for the stars, so at least get to the moon. You know what I'm saying? All right, big ideas for the end of this chapter. So only living big will let you experience your true life and work potential. Avoid incremental thinking, but simply ask what I do next. This is suggesting here more like a 10x thing or a double size thing or whatever. Just allow yourself to think, all right, well, what would it look like if it was double the size? If I was making double the income, or if I was making 10 times the income and serving 10 times the amount of people, what could that look like? How would it work? Thinking different. I love this quote. People who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the only ones who do. All right. Act bold. Big thoughts go nowhere without bold action. Okay, that's been a conversation, a circulating conversation, both with people here in this group and with other people I'm talking to. Great to have the thoughts, great to have the information, need the action to make it, that's where the rubber meets the road, right, guys? Like actually taking some action. I had a conversation with somebody who has designs on doing something in a totally different industry than they're in, and totally different industry than they're even trained in and stuff like that. And I made the suggestion of like, okay, well, and they told me he said to me, anytime I've ever told somebody this, they laughed at me because I'm just a server. I'm a waiter in a restaurant, and I want to run a hedge fund. Okay, this was the stretch. Okay. And I said, look, man, you could do that, but let's look at what it would take if you someday want to run a hedge fund. What would it take now? And it's kind of like just starting to dip your toes in the pool. Take 15 minutes a day, make an appointment with yourself, and start researching. All right, how do hedge funds work? What type of personnel do they have on their staff that I might be able to be one if I want to move into that? Who do I know that might be in finance that could tell me more or be a referral or whatever? You start with the sort of smaller preliminary things, but as you go, you get momentum, you take small actions, step, and you have a little bit different view, and you're like, oh, wow, this is actually maybe this is more attainable than I thought. Maybe I can get there sooner than someday. Maybe I can get there in a year, whatever. You follow me? Hopefully that resonates with you guys, because just putting 15, especially if you just put 15 minutes a day on something, chances are if it lights you up, you're going to spend more time. right? You're going to do more than the 15 minutes. But if you just go through the exercise of, I'm going to sit down and focus on this for 15 minutes, you might do 30 minutes, you might do an hour, you might do whatever, you're going to make progress. But if you can't do 15 minutes, and we had this conversation in our last group, Jimmy, with someone in our last group, like, you're not a writer if you don't fucking write for 15 minutes a day, right? You're not going to be an author. Like, the book is not coming if you can't fucking do 15 minutes, all right? You're not in business if you can't fucking promote your business for 15 minutes a day, right? So even just that little chunk of time dedicated on the calendar, point with yourself that you don't break because you're ruthlessly protecting your calendar and you're slicing out the unnecessary stuff with your sword, right? The calendar is a shield. This is Tim's analogy, which I love, right? Calendar is a shield to say no, to know when you can say no, easily say no. And the sword is where you're slicing out unnecessary busy work, bullshit stuff that you don't need to be doing, and so forth. And so, that's the point. Cool. Thoughts, comments, going back to the book. All right. I love this a lot. You know, the word failure is a loaded term. And I believe the more we think about failure as learning and not failing, and unless we fail forward and fail quickly and fail forward by taking action, imperfect action, then we get that other view. You know, we get that new view. We've got more information. Maybe we know what we don't want, or we know now what doesn't work. And this is all useful information. But if the actions don't come because we're too afraid to not do something perfectly or too afraid to take action, then we never get that data and we are not moving forward. So adopt that growth mindset. I think everybody here has that, but you know, our little monkey brain can fuck with us sometimes. All right, we're getting into the truth. Any last comments on the lies before we get into the truth? So this is section 2 of the book. Talks about being unclenched. Relax a little bit, you know. It's saying that being wound up and stiff, basically put them in the hospital. And I think from what I know of you guys and myself, I think we've all kind of probably experienced some version of the burnout that Gary Keller is describing here. Okay. Success comes down to this, being appropriate in the moments of your life. I love this. So if I'm with my family, I'm going to be appropriate with my family and present, my kids, etc. If I'm at work, I'm going to be present, focused, and doing my work. And I'm not going to let other shit interrupt me. I can be totally present with whatever important area of my life within a day of a time block that I'm working on. So that coincides, by the way, with a lot of the stuff that I've been studying in terms of kind of allowing things to happen, decreasing resistance, that decreasing talking yourself out of stuff, and allowing yourself to be open to receiving what's coming to you, that the universe and you have co-created. Getting a little metaphysical here, but some interesting stuff. And part of it has to do with being relaxed. Okay. So the focusing question, this is a big chapter in terms of just having a way to ask yourself good questions. And he goes on about Andrew Carnegie, says, this is kind of interesting. People say don't put your eggs in one basket. Carnegie said, put all your eggs in one basket. Like be committed fully to something, and then watch that basket, which is an interesting and I think powerful distinction that makes sense. But this focusing question, and it talks about life's question. Quality of any answer is directly determined by the quality of the question. Okay, so if we're asking ourselves like, why can't I ever do this right? Or why can't I get control of my time? Or why can't I make this happen? Or why can't I earn the money I want? You'll get the fucking answer to that. If you ask, well, how might I increase my income? How might I have more time freedom? How might I work smarter, not harder? It's a different question, right? And that's a key distinction that is definitely worth giving some thought to after we get off our call in terms of throughout your week, like what kind of questions am I asking myself? How am I talking to myself? Am I asking things that are going to, because we get the answers to what we ask, and am I just building evidence and building a case for my failure or for my success? Am I building a case for my expansion or my shrinking down, my contraction? How we phrase the questions we ask ourselves determines the answer that eventually becomes our life. Okay, and the focusing question is here, right in big letters. Once again, when there's diagrams here in the book, and when there's underlined stuff, pay extra attention to that, as well as the big ideas at the end of the chapter. So, what's the one thing I can do? So by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary. I really would strongly suggest memorizing that, and you modify it by what area of your life you're working on. Okay, so there's a big picture one thing, and there's a small focus one thing, and that has to do with where, what direction we're going. We're talking about the bigger goals, bigger direction, bigger one thing, and then a small focus, like, well, what's the next best step that'll move me toward that goal. So he breaks down this this focusing question. What's the one thing I can do? Right. So not the thing I can't do, but the thing I can do. Such by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary. We're looking for the 20% of things that are producing the 80% of the results. Okay. And so we're using that Pareto principle over and over again. We're taking a 25-item to-do list and distilling it to 20%. Well, let's say a 100-item to-do list. We're distilling it to 20 items. Then we're taking that 20 and breaking it down to 20% of that, which is 5 items, and then the 20% of that, which is 1 item in the particular area of life that you're working on. We're going to look at that in this next chapter real quick. Just see something here. Okay, we still have time. Good. So big ideas, end of the chapter. Great questions are the path to great answers. The focusing question is a double duty question. So there's a big picture and a small focus. Hope you guys are getting the distinction between those two. So there's one overriding thing and direction, target, and there is now more granular, what right now. I like this a lot because having a one thing to develop a vision for your life. We talked about distinction between a one thing, like a goal, and your one thing. So Tiffany's goal is to eradicate corporal punishment for children, but really her one thing is going to be to teach, educate, and affect legislation in that particular scenario, like to make that happen. So maybe her one thing is in the area of teaching, coaching, educating, and creating movement, whatever along those lines. So your one thing is probably some kind of amalgamation of things like that. And so those all, by doing that, it feeds and moves you towards your goal. What's my thing? Well, one thing right now, we'll get more into the time blocking and how to arrange your calendar and stuff like that. But believe me, if you have things worked out so that by reverse engineering, this little preview, but by reverse engineering your calendar from time off and resting and recharging, time with the people that you love, breaks and stuff that makes you feel good and keeps track of your well-being, putting those things in first, including long weekends and vacations, then putting in your work, you will have blocks of time throughout the day that like I am on family time, I am on work time, I am on fitness time, I am on spiritual time, I am whatever. And then so each of those times of those pillars of our life, which however many you have, it could be 4 or 5, or he has 7 of them in the book here. different areas of life, and I at least want to look at that before we go. Each of those things will have goals and one things for each of them. This is what I was talking about here. And this is what I like to kind of make a clarification and a distinction here in terms of there is everything we're talking about in terms of blocking out time, making goal setting to the now, which is taking the someday goal and reverse engineering it into the present. So we're working on it a little bit every day or as frequently as we need to. So calendar that and the prioritization and the one thing, each of these areas of life, however you define them, okay, he's got 7 here. Finances, business, job, key relationships, personal life, physical health, spiritual life. So I think we can all agree that these are all essential areas of our life. If you group one of them, if you group business and finance together or business, finance, and job together, maybe you have, therefore, 5 things or whatever the case is. But however you see it, whatever pillars are holding up the foundation and the building that you're creating in your life, or the stool that you're sitting on is holding you up. However it is, there's goals and one thing for each of these things. So when we talk about the one thing, there is not just one thing. There's a one thing for each essential area of your life. There is goal setting to the now for each essential area of your life as you define it. And I've seen people kind of get confused by this, so I want to make sure that I spend a couple of minutes. And do you guys get that there's the whole goal setting to the now, the whole time blocking that you want to make sure all these things are in your calendar, and the whole prioritization of going from a to-do list in each area of these things to a success list and going 20%, 20%, 20%, and figuring out what is the one thing I can do right now for my finances that everything else will be easier and necessary. Okay. What is the one thing I can do right now for my personal life that everything else will become easy, be easier and necessary? That's how you modify that question. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So if you know that you're on, let's say, work time, so in the job, business, finances area of your life, let's assume it's somewhere of a 4-hour block that could be divided up, but let's say we're giving 4 hours a day to work. Then you're asking that question in a business-centric focus. What's the one thing I can do for my business such that by doing it, everything else will be unnecessary? What's the 20% of the 20% of the 20% of the most important thing I need to do right now? Do I need to bring in sales? Do I need to add personnel? Do I need to set up systems that are going to help me leverage my time and my other resources? Whatever, there's going to be something on a given day, at a given time of work time that is going to be your one thing for that. Then come around whatever time, let's just say it's 5 o'clock. So 5 o'clock, all of a sudden, personal life, key relationships. Like I'm going to have dinner with my family and be present for that. What's the one thing I can do right now? Is it maybe I'll play some video games with my kids or go out on a bike ride or whatever? That there's a one thing for that. There's a one thing for a time in the day that you get to work out and make sure that you're eating right and whatever. So, guys, any feedback on this concept? Because realizing that there's going to be like 4 or 5, depending on how you divide these things up in your life and kind of brain housing group, there's going to be one things and priorities and goals for each of these. There should be, ideally, for each of these areas. That makes sense to everybody?
I think it makes sense. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I'd quite figured out how to implement it. It feels a little short-sighted for those of us that are, even when I block out my time, my kid still falls off the bike during my business time. And that is my number one priority. So it's not quite as like cut and dry, but I get the concept.
Right.
It's at least worth the effort to create the schedule so that
if you have a structure, it just gives you guidance. It'll prevent, and yes, life happens, okay? there will be urgent and important things happening when you're trying to do business, and your son's Evil Knievel just learn how to ride a bike and is crashing it all over the place, like ours. All right, so yes, absolutely. But outside of that, we're kind of talking about what hopefully will be sort of an isolated incident. So outside of things like that swooping in that do obviously take and are worth the priority attention, this will help prevent you from wondering, I wonder what I should be doing. I wonder what is the next best thing to do. I wonder what area of my life I'm paying attention to now. So all these things on the calendar, you know that your life is going to have the right stuff that's really driving it and making it a life worth living. And it's all on there. And even if you don't strictly as you might like to stick to your time blocks, it's a reference point, and it prevents that weird drifting of I'm not sure what to do.
One thing I was thinking, Brian, as we've been going through this, for me now, I think the second time, maybe the third even, if I don't plan for my future, I'm going to live through it anyway, God willing, so I better make a plan. Because I've realized in all my years that so many years have gone by with no plan, and yet I lived through those years. So I might as well make a plan. I'm living through it anyway,
Yeah. Well, we don't have a strong plan for ourselves. We're going to end up working somebody else's plan. Like somebody else does have a plan for us. Somebody else is going to be guiding, influencing us, guiding us, telling us what to do, whatever. So unless we can defend our plan, feel good about all right, well, this is what I do. I don't care what you're doing, and I don't need to do what you say because I have sovereignty over my life and time and heartbeats. We don't have a strong case within ourselves for that. Not that we have to explain it, but we don't have a strong stance, then we're going to be working somebody else's fucking plan. I guarantee it. And that could be a boss, that could be friends and peers, that could be imaginary people on Facebook or whatever, their highlight reels, or it could be even kids. There's boundaries, there's healthy boundaries that can be set all around these things. It's not a perfect process, guys, gals. I get it. Yeah. The last 2 days, our youngest son has crashed his fucking bike. He was the one that was riding better and riding sooner than his older brother, but he's just out there crashing the fucking thing. And luckily, knock wood, he's right. Tiffany, he's fine, right? Some bumps, bruises, scrapes, whatever. But he's taking a day off from riding his bikes. But they're both excited.
He said the universe is clearly showing him he should take a day off from riding this bike.
Yeah. So who's to expect that? Especially 2 days in a row. It's life is gonna fucking happen. Yes, there's gonna be urgent and important emergencies, things that you just have to put down what you're doing and pay attention because they're important. And yes, absolutely. But in general, barring those types of incidents, your phone ringing should not be that urgent, that firefighting type of thing that you have to fucking answer. Okay, your email going off, your messenger going off, all these things, distractions coming at us from every different angle. And Tim said yesterday to me, I'm back in my bunker. This behind me, this is my bunker. This is my work fucking bunker. Where I hunker down and focus on shit. And then if I want to walk around the house and figure out, I got some dishes to wash and I got some laundry to do and I should probably fucking walk the dog. Yeah, well, that will distract me. So what do? Hunker down here for a period of time. Maybe I'm using the Pomodoro technique and it's fucking 25-minute blocks, right? Maybe it's an hour block. Maybe it's an hour and a half block. Maybe it's a 4-hour block. I don't know. I can't sit in one place for 4 hours, right? So there's going to be some kind of break. But whatever fits you, you got to get that 4 hours of concentrated work and business time in. Some of it might be the job, which is the reward for what you're doing. You're a coach, so you're doing coaching. I'm sitting here doing coaching. I love it. It lights me up. fulfills me. But then there's also the business part of it, which is I got to make sure somebody's paying me to sit up here and do this shit, right? I gotta, like, there's economics involved. And so I got to make sure. We were talking the other day, Tiffany and I were talking about sort of packaging.
How she doesn't remember that part?
What?
How I don't remember that part, that people are supposed to pay me to coach.
I wasn't going to say that.
Do that shit.
Yeah, you can say that, but I wasn't going to say that. Okay.
I said that.
But we were talking about packaging and pricing, and as I'm moving into and getting greater mastery and technique in terms of designing all that for my clients, numbers are rolling off my tongue in a conversation that never did before. And I know they're going to get the value, right? And all it was a fucking head game of like, you mean I can charge 5,000? I can say 5,000 instead of the investment is 500? Yeah. If you're solving a problem for someone or helping them solve a problem that, you know, is worth or costing them 5 times, 10 times as much as your investment is, then you're right on, you know, you're on the mark. You know what I'm saying? So if you can identify, and this is a separate conversation, but in terms of what you're doing in business, whether it's, you know, product, program, service, whatever the case is, if what you do and how you help is alleviating the headache and the cost of someone's problem, that it could be that they want to make $10,000 a month and they're only making $5,000. Well, guess what? That's a fucking $60,000 a year program. Problem. That's a cost, right? So that opportunity cost or that gap in what they think they should be doing or what they want to be doing and what they're doing is $60,000. So would it be out of line and out of value for you to say the investment to work with me this year is $10,000? So you can go make that 60? Interesting thinking, okay? It's a little bit of entrepreneurial ideas thrown in, but I think it probably applies to your guys' you know, universe a little bit.
Well, you know, I thought about that exact thing, Brian, with this client I'm taking on. You know, I thought about the amount of money that it costs them to stay at the Cypress Center for 9 days at almost $1,000 a day.
Yep.
And to avoid another, you know, stay like that,
right,
it's going to cost them cash.
So you're solving, if you can help keep her out of there, you're solving a $90,000 problem. Is that what you just said? 90 days at $1,000 a day?
It's $1,000 a day, and she was there for 9 days. So
9 days. All right, so $9,000 program. All right, so you're solving a $9,000 problem. So what's it worth? Plus, that's not just the only cost. That's the dollar cost there.
Then there's the time,
out, right?
Yeah,
Interruptions to life.
Time lost from work, time that her partner lost from work coming to visit. I mean, it just keeps adding up.
Right. So really, you're probably solving a $20,000 or $30,000 program or a problem. I keep saying problem or more, something like that. So keep that in mind. And when you're, I know this is off topic, but when you're creating a package for someone, like whether it's, you know, work with me 3 months or 6 months or a year or however is comfortable for you, you're going to keep in mind that by doing so, we're going to alleviate this headache and all these costs that you're paying, and by not having to go back to the psych ward, okay, or whatever is going on with that. All right, I'm laughing, but you know it's all good. So, anyways, we're coming to the about the end of our time. Any further thoughts, questions, so forth? We covered chapter 9 and 10, and we'll get more into chapter 11 next week. Success habit. I just wanted to show you that one diagram in there of the 7 areas of life and give you the idea of within each of those pillars of life that are essential to you, there's one things in there. What's the one thing I could do right now that everything else becomes easier and necessary, which is basically like what's the most highly leveraged thing I can be working on in that area right now. It doesn't have to feel like work. It's with your kids or something. But what's the best thing that could be doing, and so forth. So thoughts, questions, comments, or we just sign off.
I just like the idea of telling Trish that you have to have a plan in order to have something to reorient to. So as you were saying, you don't have that. What was I doing? You don't have to. You know what you're going back to. Yes, there are emergencies. Yes, things happen, and it's good to go. Oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Got it.
Yeah, and we're gonna get distracted, but we can at least be conscious of it. We don't have to beat ourselves up over it, but when we catch ourselves like multitasking, like I'm on this call trying to learn something or think about some things in a different perspective, and I'm trying to write a post on Facebook at the same time, or chatting with, texting with my friend or whatever, you're doing yourself a disservice. All you have to recognize is like, I'm making myself less effective right now by doing this multitasking, or I'm making myself less effective by, I'm trying to do something for work and it's a little challenging, so I'm going to fucking load the dishwasher. No, or trim the hedges or mow the lawn. I mean, it's just something to be aware of. Doesn't make you a bad person, but now you kind of have that in your brain. You're like, oh, okay, well, maybe if I stay and continue to focus on what I'm doing, I'll get more traction, I'll get more results, and I can get to that later. All right. Appreciate you guys, and keep the conversation going in the group. I'll upload the recording, and any thoughts in there, feel free to interact. I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more conversation in there. But nevertheless, either way, I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. And we'll go over the next couple chapters. Cool?
Cool.
Got it.
All right.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Have a good night.